All right. Well, welcome. We're finishing off our coaching, our workshop week, free workshop week with some coaching. This is the coaching call for Friday evening. So welcome everyone. And you're welcome to raise your hand if you want some coaching. I'm staying on to coach everyone. So I know Rachel, you were on first, and Carrie, I think, was next. So you ready to start? Actually, before we start, I'll just preface by saying what I was saying to you guys right before we hit record is that when you're listening back to coaching, really try to listen to the situation that you're hearing and apply it to yourself. So maybe it's not directly, they're talking about their spouse and you could relate it to your boss or something like that. But there might be situations, I mean, often there are, that you can hear someone else being coached and gain a lot of insight from them. So even if you're not directly being coached, have that intent in mind, and especially listening for whatever answers might pertain to your question. Okay. All right. And this whole week we've been doing somatic workshops because my favorite thing to do and what I specialize in is somatic coaching. So where we're tuning into the body, super helpful, obviously, if you have chronic pain or disease, or just to gain some insights that are kind of more subconscious, right? I think of the body as the subconscious mind. So let's start with you, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. I've loved. I've listened to all of the lectures so far,
Awesome.
and half of them had to do with. Well, my takeaway was that pain is in the mind, not the body.
Yes, it's literally always created in the mind. And it's like, I think of our brain having I think of those old telephone control panel things, that they plugged in and or like a control network, and our brain can just turn it on and turn it off and we feel it in our body, but it doesn't mean that damage caused it. It means our brain activated that network, that pathway.
I have chronic hip pain.
Okay.
I had a very bad injury there. I slipped and fell with my full weight on that joint on the ice.
Okay. So
And
that
the
is.
doctor said, well, nothing's broken. You're fine. Get up and walk. But I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
I
Did
couldn't
they,
get up.
yeah. Did they find
I
any
couldn't.
other damage, or it
No,
wasn't?
they didn't. And two
Okay.
years later, I complained. I said, oh, this feels arthritic.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor said, well, what do you expect? You had an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 30 years later, and I just do not accept that anything is real, true, or the only option.
Yeah. Especially if
Uh,
you've tried a lot of options, right? You've tried all the
yeah, so
medical
I
things
cleared
and
that up.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
cleared that up. And could it be more? About a year and a half ago was like violently painful. I could hardly get upstairs. And I don't know who I asked, but the answer that came back was, you've got something in your brain that says, what do you expect? You get to a certain age and that's it.
Mm. Did that
And
resonate?
you have osteoporosis because you haven't got your hormone shit together. And
Mm.
what do you
Is that
expect?
a diagnosis? Do you have a diagnosis
Yeah,
of
yes,
osteoporosis? Okay. Okay.
yes. But I just not willing to take that line down. So
Yeah.
I'm studying I'm studying bone stuff. And the loop that I get stuck in is, it says you have to do exercise. And then when I do it, I'm too sore,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm in worse pain.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to tell you, and you probably have heard this before, but I find it fascinating, the studies that they've done on pain-free people. So we know that people who have no chronic pain can have arthritis, they can have bulging discs, they can have rotator cuff tears. There was one study of young athletes. So these are young people who are athletes. 89% had a hip labral tear.
Whoa.
Just never check out people who are healthy. So if we go in with a microscope or MRI, whatever, right, we do that imaging, it is true that you could have a diagnosis. I don't know a ton about osteoporosis, so I don't want to speak to that, but I know so much about arthritis that they, as a physical therapist, I was like, ooh, arthritis, that's something you can't change. You just have to live with it. So many people have arthritis that have no chronic pain. So we just, that's the first thing to really, really keep reminding yourself is that, yeah, maybe you do have, something like they can find, which sounds like they even haven't on your hip. But even if they did, it doesn't mean you have to live with chronic pain. But you did have a trauma in the sense you fell, and, trauma meaning like an impact on your body. And I would say your nervous system too, right? Like you had a scary thing, your muscles tightened up, and now they tighten up when you're scared. Does that resonate?
I don't really buy into fear.
Oh, tell me more
So,
about that.
so no, it's not that. But
Well,
I
tell me,
have,
wait. And let me pause you there because you do have some kind of fear around walking. You told me with exercise, you are afraid of doing too much because it hurts, but then you're supposed to do weight bearing. So that's fear. Yeah.
okay, yes, okay, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
And
not only that, I'm the caregiver for my spouse who is basically can't move.
mhm,
So there is scare. I
yeah.
do get scared that I'm not allowed to not be able to move.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. As you're talking about it too, just as we're talking about things, just kind of check in on that area and notice there might be times we're talking about things and your hip starts tightening up. Just speaking of, stressful things.
Okay, let's pay attention.
I don't know if you've experienced that, but yeah, just thinking of it as your nervous system on kind of a hypervigilant alert for anything scary, dangerous. You could have think of dangerous, right? Like maybe not fear, like, in a certain way, but like worry, anxiety, anything that's one of those survival states. Yeah.
Right, right. I have to pay more attention to that.
Okay. Yeah. So do you have a specific question? It sounds like you said the weight bearing, you're supposed to do weight bearing. So let's just take that statement. um, we had a coaching call earlier today that wasn't recorded, but we were talking about how there are these kind of things that we've been told by doctors, by physical therapists, right? About like posture has to be a certain way, or weight bearing has to be for this, or we shouldn't weight bear. For decades, they told people with arthritis not to run. Turns out current research says running's the best thing for it because of weight bearing. So I know osteoporosis is, the weight bearing activities is supposed to, strengthen the bone, things like that. But when our nervous system is stressed out, we're not in our best capacity for, processing calcium and digesting and all of these things. So what I would offer is if you're super stressed about an activity, it's best not to do that thing and do other things that your body enjoys, like what movements do feel good, or starting with, just really rewiring that brain and starting to notice. I mean, there may be other ways of approaching it, but as far as just that concept of like weight bearing is something I have to do and it's stressful, like that's going to create more pain. The brain can create pain just from that kind of thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make
That
sense.
does. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so, um,
The other problem
yeah,
that's really true
yeah,
is we're so hosed with information.
yeah,
You have to be
exactly.
really intuitive to figure out which part's working for you.
Yes, exactly. So I use this concept that I got from Abraham Hicks, and they
Uh,
say upstream or downstream. And so
right.
you can start to feel that in your body, like what feels more downstream. And that's the more intuitive approach. That might be like, I ask myself these kinds of things too. Like, do I feel like doing yoga today? Do I feel like going for a walk? Do I feel like taking a nap? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really believe that there is a quote unquote right thing for everyone, because there's like 90-year-olds that smoked cigarettes every day their whole life. You know what I mean? It's just, none of it makes sense. You can find evidence for whatever you want to find. Most of the time, it just stresses out our nervous system to have all that information to try to integrate it all. Because for this, you're supposed to weight bear, and for this, you're not. And for this, this food's bad and this food's good. And they're changing it every couple of years. And it just, none of it makes sense, but your body knows. Do you believe that?
I do believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so
Okay,
getting
cool.
back to exercise, they talk about graded exposure. I don't know if you've read The Way Out by Alan Gordon. That's a book I recommend everyone read, because it's based on the latest research, a study that just came out last
How
year.
does Alan spell his name?
Alan. I can
Okay.
write it. Alan. But anyway, they talk about graded exposure. It's a way of getting back to exercise. You can start by visualizing it. In fact, we could do that together. That might be a good way to, kind of show you and demo the coaching with that.
Mhm.
But basically, as far as, I just kind of got hung up on this, like I have to weight bear, for exercise. Like, those are the kinds of things we want to just question for now. Like, it doesn't mean that you won't love weight bearing activities, but it could come from this place of like, it feels good when my body does this. And, I love walking outside in nature versus my doctor said I have to weight bear, 30 minutes. Because if you're taking care of your husband, you're weight bearing. If you're like helping transfer him and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if anything feels fearful, just like ask me about it, or like, because chances are I could even quote some other research and say, that's been disproven, or you could look at it this way, or you know what I mean? So anyway,
Yeah.
like posture
Cool.
stuff that I used to tell people all the time, it's a weak core, or like you can't hunch over, that causes the pain. It's because they didn't study pain-free people. And there was one lady in The Way Out, her back was shaped like an S, 70 degrees of scoliosis. She became chronic pain-free, and she didn't do one single exercise for her back. So we have this idea that we have to be like, and for perfectionists, it really resonates. We're like, if I could just be like stronger and more perfect with my posture, then I wouldn't have this pain. We just have to be like, the current research does not show that. But
Yeah,
when we
mindset
stress
is
out
very
about it, that can
important.
cause pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do a little graded exposure. We can do it. And it's really actually a cool demonstration. So, do you have pain right now in that area? In the hip?
Yeah.
You do.
Not
Okay.
terrible. Not terribly.
Not terrible.
I give it a 2.
Okay. And if you just get up and walk around a little, does it start hurting immediately, or is it more when you go on a walk for a certain amount of time?
It happens when I go on for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Which, okay.
Because I love to hike.
Yeah, I have to
And then
stop
I'm
there though.
finding out, oops.
Yeah. Because, okay, which you got injured when you were out on a walk. So, like, to me, that makes so much sense. If I fell off a horse and got injured, then the next time I'm on a horse, I might be like, oh. So that's interesting too, right? If you can walk all around the house, but it's out on a walk, that's when it seems more like that heightened nervous system, trauma response type of thing. Okay. So, if you would have told me just walking a few steps would increase your pain, then I'd have you do that just to like get a feeling of it and demo it. But that's usually how you start with graded exposure. If you can do the activity, like for someone, if it was sitting to stand, then actually go from sitting to stand and just kind of feel how that feels in your body. Or if it hurts to like push on a muscle, you could push on it and just see how it feels. That's the first step of graded exposure. But for you, we're not going to make you walk 20 minutes or whatever to recreate that pain. So we'll just see what happens. The second step is to imagine yourself doing the activity. So for you, let's try it. Okay, so let's have you close your eyes. And since we've just been talking, I'm just going to have you take a few breaths, and you guys can try this along too. This is perfect for an activity that causes pain. So you're like, every time I raise my arm or every time I turn my head, whatever it is. Okay. So what you're going to do is imagine yourself doing that activity. So for you, you would imagine you're outside, think of a familiar place that you walk, and you imagine, kind of yourself stepping, how it feels to raise your leg, how it feels to step through, can you, as you're imagining it, do you have more sensation in your hip at all? Like kind of an awareness or just like a tightening at all? Anything like that as you're
Yeah, I
imagining
do.
it? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Think about that, right? That's created in the brain, obviously, because you
Mm.
weren't doing the activity, but your brain, how did it feel? What did it do?
It tensed up like, okay, you got all the way here, but you're not going to get back.
And it tensed up in real life.
Yeah.
Did your sensation, did your pain increase?
Yeah.
And you were just sitting here.
Yeah. And
How
the
powerful is
last
your
time I
brain?
did this exercise with you
You
in
did
one
it
of
with me
with
and it
it
didn't work.
with our
Oh,
previous sessions, in one of the previous
oh, I
sessions,
forgot about that,
um,
Rachel.
I didn't have any pain. I was like, oh, well, I can do this. If I'm imagining it, I can do it without pain. Why not?
Yeah, that's
But
right.
not today.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for being that perfect model for us. It's always great when, in my world, I'm like, it's great when that happens because it is, right? Like, it's cool to see that your brain, I mean, I've had people that literally imagined themselves standing up and got just as much pain as when they did it in real life. For me, when I would think of coffee, my stomach started to hurt. So after I took Dr. Schubiner's course, I was like, of course, that's mind body because I'm not even drinking it and my stomach feels, all gurgly and upset. Okay, so that is a beautiful example that it's mind body. So before you go out walking, I would suggest you do a lot of brain retraining while you're just sitting. That's what graded exposure, the first level of graded exposure is just your imagination. So we can do that together. So if you guys are playing along, right, if you did the movement and then you imagine the movement, the third part is to imagine the movement with joy and pain free. So you could imagine maybe not that same trail, or maybe it is that trail, right? But this time you're trying to imagine it pain free. And you're also adding in an emotion that's powerful. So, like happiness, gratitude, joy, bliss, whatever. You're like imagining the sun on your face, you're imagining the wind in your hair, right? Like it's just this glorious, that's how you imagine it to rewire your brain. Okay. So go ahead and close your eyes again. Imagine yourself doing the activity. Imagine all the like amazing details that you can. It's like you're smelling the fresh air and you're feeling the wind on your skin, or whatever it is. You're like smiling, and smile in real life. That actually helps too. If you smile in real life, you think about how grateful you are. You think about how fun this is. You think about how good it feels. Anything that you can conjure up that's just like so excited, right? How did that go, Rachel?
I took I took a stadium blanket with me so I
Yeah.
could sit down when it was too much,
I love
take a little
that.
break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And joy is fun. I practice joy and gratitude.
Oh, good. Good. So now just pair it with the walking you want to do,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
anything else you want to, manifest in your life, honestly. It's a little secret to life right there. But that is actually what they teach in pain science to rewire your brain. That's the third step of graded exposure, right? Is just like imagining it with joy. I've had people imagine running on the beach. I've had people imagine doing yoga. I imagined drinking coffee, I'm like, I actually didn't do it. Once I made that connection, I was able to start drinking coffee without problems. I didn't have to do a lot of graded exposure. But can you see how doing that before you actually go outside and do it for real could help?
Yeah,
Yeah.
decades ago, I learned all that with somebody trying to teach us tennis.
Oh, yeah. Sports psychologists have been doing this for decades. I'm sure
Yeah.
every single Olympian does that, right? They imagine themselves doing their routine perfectly. If they don't, I would be shocked because they've known about it since like the 80s or something, right? They've been
Yeah,
doing it forever.
yeah, right. That's when I
Yeah.
learned it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, just keep doing that like reps. I like to imagine that kind of stuff before I go to sleep at night. I'm just laying there anyway. So instead of worrying about stuff, and I always tell people like I used to make lists in my head to go to sleep at night, like what I had to do tomorrow. And now I like imagine something beautiful that I want to create in my life or, something fun. Not
I do
always.
that, and I do a practice that I need to get back into. Sometimes I just feel too tired.
Mhm.
Called Run the Movie.
Run the movie. Is it of the day or what is
No,
it?
run the movie of what you think you're going to do tomorrow, or yeah, run the movie of how you think it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Then you find,
Yeah.
you don't have enough time, or you find somebody who should be there isn't there, or, you
Mm.
know,
Oh, I've never
you
heard of that.
practice it.
So cool. See, this stuff is just you already have practice in one area. Now we're just applying it to your body.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
So cool. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so much. All right. Carrie, did you have a question for coaching? You were on next.
Hey,
Hey, good to see you.
nice to see you. Yeah, I actually I don't know if I just sent you Slack messages like an
Oh, I
hour ago, and
didn't.
so
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't.
I figured you probably didn't have a chance to see them yet. But I was wondering if this can be used like in the reverse, somatic work. So I had a one-on-one coaching call this afternoon, and we focused on like celebrating wins from 2022.
Hmm.
And I got super excited about it, was feeling like passion and fire and motivation again, things that I have not felt in years,
Nice.
um, coming off the end of burnout and then just numbness. So she kind of ended it with like, okay, so now how are you going to anchor into those feelings? And I'm like, what do you mean anchor? What is this?
Mm,
And she was talking about how like to be able to embody those emotions and thoughts surrounding these accomplishments, wins, whatever.
yes.
And she suggested a few ways. And one of the things she said was like somatically, like
Yeah.
to and I was like, what? I've never thought about using this
Oh, yeah.
for the positive feelings.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Totally. Oh,
and maybe I
yeah.
totally missed it in workshop week because I've not gotten through them all yet.
No,
But
no, no. You'll get this. Okay, I'm gonna explain it in such an easy way that you'll totally get it. It's just because we've been taught that like our minds and bodies are separate. But if you think of this being like your nervous system being part of like how your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings are in your body, that as you're a coach, right? Are you a coach? Oh,
a
okay. I was
physician.
thinking you were a life coach school coach. Okay. Even in the life coach school where I got trained as a coach, they teach you like your thoughts create your feelings and feelings are vibrations in your body. Okay. So even just thinking of it that way. And then I'm going to tie in because, I love like law of attraction. And this is like the third time I'm talking about manifesting, Abraham Hicks, that kind of stuff. But that is literally what they teach you for manifesting is like feel the emotion that you want to feel. Say that you wanted to make $1 million. What do you think you're going to feel if you make $1 million? You're like freedom and happiness, abundance. And so start practicing somatically in your body. That's all that means somatically is just practicing the emotion and how it feels. So you could think of, what freedom feels like to you, not you don't have it around money perhaps, or feeling that freedom around $1 million, but you feel freedom when you're going down the ski slopes and you're like, it feels like this opening in my chest and it feels like right? Like that kind of thing. And you just practice feeling those emotions and do those kind of things that bring those emotions of abundance, of love, of whatever it is. And that's how you, this is the part where it gets less scientific. I mean, it is vibration related, but that's how you attract those things to you. And I'm sure someday they'll just have a real scientific explanation for vibrations and attraction like that. But does that make sense, where you like anchor into that emotion, you practice the emotion that you want to have, and then it's like, because you have that emotion, it's easy to take the actions to do it, versus if you're like, okay, how do I work my way to $1 million, and every day you're like, I got to work 8 hours and grind hard, versus you're like, maybe I'll, in abundance, I'll like meet someone who like offers me this position. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of like, how is that resonating with you so far? I'm like, I can explain it so clearly. And then
Yeah.
I realized it's like, there's a few leaps that I take that not everyone does, but in my mind, it's very clear.
Yeah. So I didn't think about it in that way. So that's very interesting. I like that. I was thinking about it as like a neuroplastic thing. Like the more I feel these emotions in my body, the more I feel them, right?
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
it's
Yeah.
kind of saying the
That's
same thing,
well,
just
yeah, that's
on a
it.
more,
It's a more
yeah,
scientific way to explain it. Ooh, I love that.
yeah.
Because
So
you can,
then,
yeah,
yeah, so then
what
I
you
was like,
focus on, you
okay,
create
wait,
more of. Sorry.
right. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, so how can I use these techniques that you have used like in the reverse way? So like we've been doing this for pain.
Mhm. Can
Is
you give
there
me
a
an
way that
example? Like, what's the thing you want?
um I don't know, gosh, I had so many like emotions I was feeling, but one of them was just like drive and like I called it fire, but it was like
Mm,
this drive to do more, to create more of what I've already started creating.
mhm.
And um, so I thought maybe doing and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the names of all these
Oh,
different
no
techniques,
worries.
but the
Created
one where
exposure, or no, somatic tracking.
yes, somatic tracking. And I
Yeah.
was like, is there a way to like
Yeah.
reverse do that?
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Because basically any sensation in your body that you can cultivate, you can do somatic tracking with. And emotions are pretty good ones because we're used to cultivating them. We're not used to like turning on a pain signal, consciously at least, but we are used to like, how does it feel to feel drive? Like, think of a time that you've felt it. Yeah, you can close your eyes, or if you're playing along, you can do any emotion that you want. That's, I want to feel more creativity, or that spark, that passion. How does that feel in your body, Carrie? How could you describe it? You can keep your eyes closed and just keep like feeling it.
I just feel like super warm in my chest and in my like forehead, my face.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is
just
there a
a lot
color?
of heat.
Oh, sorry.
Uh, yeah, red.
Red. What were you saying?
Just a lot of heat.
Heat. Okay. So it's hot and it's red. And can you tell me more about like a time you felt it before? What was going on?
Um, yeah, when I started my uh, fellowship training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, just so excited and like ready to soak up as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more now about that sensation in your body. So it's in your chest, it's in your face, it's warm, it's red. Tell me about like the energy. Is it moving quickly? Is it slow or not moving?
I feel like there's a lot of movement, but within a confined space. Like it's not moving around my body, but there's a lot of movement in that space.
Okay. And what is the movement doing? Like if you gestured it with your hands, how would that look?
I think of like when I learned about when molecules warm up, they
Mm-hmm.
start, moving
Mm-hmm.
more and bouncing off each other, and
Mm-hmm.
it's chaos. And
Mm-hmm.
um, but because it's in a confined space, it's contained.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just that's kind of like what I picture.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's a good visual. Yeah. Any visuals that come to mind, that can be that somatic anchor, right? You're thinking of, um, a fire, you're thinking of these molecules, and then you have that memory of how it feels in your body, and you can cultivate it on purpose. And you can also notice it when you're doing other things and you're like, oh, I feel it when I'm doing that too. So tell me more. Is there anything more? So it's like warm, it's moving, and it's like these molecules. And is there anything else that you can think of when you're thinking of that time in your life? Maybe what kind of thoughts you had at that time in your life? Like what kinds of things were getting you so excited?
Um, well, this is what I've worked my entire life for.
Uh-huh. And that's like
Um,
is that like that's like a motivating thought as you feel it?
yeah, it was like I'm
Okay.
finally here. I did it. Like
Yeah.
I'm on top of the mountain that I've been climbing for a very
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah. So maybe now you could be like, I'm doing it. This is it. I'm doing
Hmm.
it. I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is
doing it.
this is what
Yeah.
this is what my life has all been like leading up to. Yeah.
Hmm.
As long as it's not pressure. I just wanted to make sure it's not like, okay, this is it. Here you are. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
yes. It's like, you know, the kid that gets out of school for summer break, you're like, it's finally here, right? Like,
Hmm.
yes, the world is just open ahead of me. It's like, you want to like think of all of those, anything that literally you can just practice feeling that. And then again, it's like those neural pathways. Yeah, what you focus on, you create more of. When you're full of gratitude and you're focusing on gratitude on purpose, they've done studies that it increases your sense of well-being in just 30 days. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I would.
Hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So then my thought is when I'm not feeling like this and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, this sucks. I'm doing nothing. I'm accomplishing nothing, having all those negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Do I then just lay down and picture this like hourglass shape with the molecules moving in the like it? Do I
Oh,
go
yeah, you
to
could
that?
try that. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you could try that. And then, I'll just give you some advice from like what I have been trying to do because I've been really trying to like grow my business in an intuitive way, in a way that feels fun and with lots of like resting and playing and not stressing myself out. And so you might find, I want to tell you two things. Like if you're dealing with freeze a lot, um, overwhelm can be a big contributor to freeze. So just if you're feeling like it's freeze, and you know what freeze feels like, right? For you? Yeah. So yeah. Yep, you're like, yes, I do. Yeah. If you feel like it's freeze, the best thing to do is just take little baby steps. So what I'd recommend is like getting things out on paper, and you might have done this with your coach where you have kind of these goals that you want, but then you can break it down into like little things, and you might have like 20 or 30 little things or whatever. You don't have to go into too much detail, but like starting with what feels the most downstream, like I was talking about before, the most fun, because then you're still taking some step towards that, but you're less likely to get overwhelmed and just go into freeze, or less likely to burn out if you start with doing you might have to do something because of time constraints, but other than that, right? If it's like you have 20 things on your list, you're not obviously going to do them all, but starting with the easiest, the most fun. And what is are your goals around, is it coaching, or why am I thinking you're a coach? I keep thinking you're a coach, but
I love coaching. I mean,
I
I like getting
know.
coached, but I don't think I'd be very good at it.
Yeah. I'm sure that's not true.
No, I'm a physician. I'm a DO actually, so I loved
Okay.
the
Okay.
DO
Awesome.
shout out in your first
Oh,
one.
yes. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I started a new job this past year, so I've got some goals on building that practice, and
Mm,
um, so that's a big one. Yeah, we'll just stick with that for now.
okay. Okay. So yeah, building a practice, I guess maybe that's why I think of like building a business, building a practice. And so
Mhm.
then maybe you think of like your overthinking brain is going to be like, well, I have to do this and I have to do this. I'm an expert on this because I'm like, well, in order to send one email, I have to like redo my website and I have to like do, like it doesn't make sense, but it gets me an overwhelm. And then I have to just regulate my nervous system. And you know what I mean? Like very little gets done when that happens. So just again, yeah, taking that approach of like, the true path to doing it in a sustainable way is going to be doing more of the things I enjoy, and, you know, trusting that if there's something I really need to do, I'll do it. And since you're in Alignment Academy, I do have a module about, what is it called? Oh, it's called segment intending. This is another Abraham thing where it's like, if you have something that you need to do, and it's like a time sensitive thing, you can't just go and regulate for a while and then come back to it. You actually do like a writing practice to get you, emotionally in a better place so that it does go easier and faster and is more tolerable. But that's what I just use if I like really have to do something and I don't want to do it. But otherwise, I try to find whatever feels most downstream. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But I've never thought to try just go sit down, create that emotion of desire. I would combine thoughts that feel good with that somatic feeling. You could probably record yourself saying things, you know what I mean? You could get super creative about it. And I think that's a great idea. You should try it and report back. I'm sure people have done it, right? Like cultivate that emotion. You might do it before like a talk or something, or an event. You like cultivate the emotion of calm or whatever. So why not cultivate desire, or yeah, drive right
Mhm.
before you're going into clock into work or whatever. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And yeah, I think paired with that emotion and feeling it in your body, the more you can have like a few phrases that feel really good and resonant. So I can let's see. I think these might be good for you. Anyway, I'll reach out to you more on Slack about other resources for like really helpful beliefs, you know, that you can
Mhm.
start pairing, because your beliefs, your thoughts are going to cause feelings in your body too. So you can recreate it somatically just with your body and imagining molecules and that. And you could help that along with the thoughts you're thinking of, like, I love helping people, and like people want my information, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not thinking of the best ones, but because I have some cool sounding ones, I have it written all on a board. I came to create a new reality. My success is inevitable. I have a whole list of them. So anyway, sometimes when I'm not feeling very motivated, I just read through that list and I, cultivate the emotion that way. So good.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you asked that.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And Carrie's been doing awesome in our program with, how's your back been doing? Is it still doing pretty well?
Yeah, I still get pain, although it's a lot less frequent. And when
Mhm.
I do, I'm just like Yeah, okay. You're gonna be gone in 5 minutes anyway, so you can scream all you want.
And it goes away in 5 minutes?
Oh, oh, less than that, yeah.
Less
Yeah.
than that?
It,
Ah,
yeah, it's quite
so cool.
phenomenal. I mean, I told you that I didn't have to do the epidural, and
Yes.
it's just I'm going on my trip in a week, and I'm not afraid like that I'm gonna hurt my back or anything like that. Like, yeah,
Good.
all
Yeah, because
good.
we talked about doing graded exposure for your hike. Yeah, or at least I
Hmm.
think I mentioned that in Slack or something. Yeah,
Hmm.
that is awesome. So you guys, since it's my, coaching call, I'm going to do a little shout out for Alignment Academy because powerful stuff happens there, right? Okay, so good. Thank you for being
Yeah.
that example and for asking such a cool question. That's the kind of stuff you can start playing with when you're out of chronic pain, right? You're like, instead of thinking about my pain every day, all day, and this epidural and worrying about my trip, now I'm thinking about how I can like cultivate emotions on purpose and grow my business in a fun way. How cool is that? Okay, awesome. Okay, I actually don't know who was next. Jill, James. It might have been James actually. Hey, are you ready?
Hi, oh, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Have we
great.
met? I don't think we've met, right?
No, but actually, so I learned about you through Katrina Ubel. I'm one of those guys
Oh,
on that
cool.
that
Are you
podcast. And
okay? Are
just,
you a physician?
yeah.
Sweet. What
So,
area?
nephrology, so kidneys, blood
Oh,
pressure, dialysis.
okay. Something I know very little about.
I know
If you
very
know
little
what
about chronic
nephrology
pain, so
means, that's probably the extent. Okay, very cool.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks for all the podcasts and everything you do.
My pleasure.
So I guess I've always had some anxiety since
Huh.
growing up. Just a little background about myself. And I would periodically get stomach aches as a kid, and maybe was aware of the anxiety, maybe not. By the time I got to med school, when I started, I got just crippling stomach aches whenever I had to be on call at night in the hospital. But by that time in my life, I knew what those were. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what that is. And I just ignored it and they went away after a while. So I started weightlifting about 7 years ago. I'm currently 50, so age 43.
Mm-hmm.
And in late 2018, went to a personal trainer to try to help me exercise safely.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, after a couple of months of those exercises, I developed a lot of pain in the left hand and down the forearm.
Oh, interesting.
And
Okay.
tried some conservative therapies, ended up getting an ultrasound and an EMG, and was diagnosed with cubital tunnel syndrome, so neuritis.
Mm-hmm.
And tried a bunch of stuff, PT and OT, and some more conservative things for about a year and a half, and finally got surgery on that nerve.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a transposition and moved it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by so the symptoms sort of changed after that. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
exactly get better.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that surgery, they kind of tacked that nerve in place by wrapping a little bit of tissue around it.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting another ultrasound and EMG, and it showed that that band of tissue had constricted around the nerve.
Mm.
So I saw another surgeon, the neurosurgeon.
Was the EMG abnormal too, or
Yeah, the
just
EMG was abnormal too.
so there was decreased nerve activity there?
Yeah, I should see that my symptoms. I looked on the web for other people who had cubital tunnel syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that I read about were just really horrific compared to my symptoms, which were comparatively mild. So I tried to feel some gratitude around that. So I never lost sensation or motor ability in anything.
Oh,
It's just this pain or weird hypersensitivity that's just kind of uncomfortable, but I've always had full activity, fortunately.
okay.
But the neurosurgeon thought that, well, if we cut this band and allow the nerve to expand and do a slightly different surgery, that could possibly help. So I did that in July, this past July.
Okay.
And he said afterwards in the OR, the nerve just looked awful. It was horribly inflamed and just a huge mess. And
Okay.
so this time, in contrast to last time, I did some occupational therapy
Mm-hmm.
and some ulnar nerve glides and massaging the scar to try to prevent scar tissue. But I'm
Mm.
still having symptoms, and it's hard to say whether it's really better than before this most recent surgery. Symptoms kind of come and go, and it's tough to really correlate anything I do with them.
Oh, okay. So that's good news for this world. Did you know that? I don't know how much you know about.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, come and go. Like, okay, if you think of a nerve that's damaged, that's not going to just like come and go, right? If it's damaged according to that paradigm.
Right.
So that they come and go is actually a good sign.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time, about 10 days in mid-December, when I, just like a month ago, when I had no symptoms at all.
Oh, what was going on then? Like
I have no idea.
emotionally.
I can't really correlate it to anything, unfortunately.
Okay. You weren't like on vacation or like
No, but
so
one thing that
December's
was,
Christmas time, was it?
no, it was before all of that. But
Huh?
one thing that was encouraging is that we did go on vacation early January, and I was concerned that these symptoms would really limit me.
Mhm.
But I ended up doing some swimming and tennis and biking and my usual like weights and elliptical and treadmill. And like I did one day, I did all of that on the same day, and there was
Yeah.
really no increase in symptoms. So
Okay. Well, what
I was
does
kind
your
of
brain
encouraged
make
by
about
that.
that?
Yeah, that was kind of encouraging, but
Yeah.
also a little baffling because I can't really correlate anything to when
Yeah.
they come on and when they don't.
Okay. Well, that's such good news, right? That for in my world that if you're especially doing things that you enjoy and you're not having pain, that's really indicative that it's mind body. You're distracted, you're not in fear in that moment, and fear is a big driver of pain. So that could be fear, like actual fear of pain, or it could be like being really critical of yourself, or it could be really like frustrated, right? Like you have the pain and then you get frustrated. So what okay, let's see. So you've not read The Way Out. You don't know about the like neural pathway pain, or like have you heard any of that? Neuroplastic pain, or a little bit, a little.
I've dabbled
Okay.
in podcasts.
Okay. Oh,
I've read
right.
some,
Okay.
yeah.
You've heard some good podcasts apparently. So
Yeah.
yeah, the best ones. Okay. So okay. I just wanted to know like how much to like explain,
Yeah,
but
I know a little
basically,
bit about the neural structure. I'm actually hoping, it's they say that the nerve finishes whatever healing it's going to do in about 6 months, and it's
Mhm.
actually exactly 6 months today. And so I
Oh,
feel like
well, that's
it's
good.
going to
Yeah.
be physiologically what it's going to be at this point. And so I'm wondering what neural circuit component there is and how I can address it in other ways so that I get to the point where I almost don't care about it, which
Okay.
some people
Yes,
say.
exactly. That's ultimately where we want to get. And you heard Carrie just barely, who was like, okay, I still get the pain and then I don't freak out about it and it goes away within 5 minutes or less. And so that is what we're talking about with this rewiring, because you heard Rachel's call with, you know, that walking being associated with like tensing up her body at a physiological level. Like I think of it as like if you had food poisoning and then you think of that food in the future again, how your body reacts. But then imagine you're just like thinking about your food every day and all day long, and you're getting experts to tell you how bad that food was. And then, you know what I mean? Like that's what we're dealing with when these neural pathways get hyper vigilant and then start to get more afraid, and then did I just feel it there? No. Oh, there it is. You know what I mean? Right. So the fact that you had pain-free days, that's as good as your nerve's gonna get. Like that's
Right.
pretty freaking good, right? Like that's what you should expect. So the chronicity or the chronic pain, it's fear related, and it's based in these like a trauma response, which is basically a survival state. Your nervous system goes into survival states all the time. And for you, there'll be ways of identifying exactly like, what your triggers are. The more you look at it through an emotional lens, just going forward, even after this call, you'll be able to pinpoint some things so differently, because you're like, I have no idea when it comes or goes, because you're looking at it through the physical lens, and you're like, sometimes it's when I'm like guessing, right? Like you could say something like, sometimes it's when I'm laying down, sometimes it's when I'm not active, sometimes it's when I am active, sometimes right? But if you look at the emotional lens, you're like, oh, doing things I love, I don't ever feel it. That's what typically people start to find. when I'm in stressful environments, I feel it more. That's what people typically find. So you can start to be a little more discerning about, what is really going on. You look for times that it feels better. You build that evidence of like, I don't have to fear if it's going to get better because the nerve is, like at a certain level of function or not. You've had 10 pain-free days. Your nerve is fine. Does that resonate?
I mean, I think there is something physiological there that may or may not improve past a certain point.
What does that mean? No, wait. We want to stop that kind of thinking because
Okay.
read Alan Gordon's book, The Way Out, just read that. But he says, when the brain believes the body is damaged, it responds with pain. So you saw that example with Rachel, right? Her brain believes there's something dangerous about walking and that, her hip isn't 100% or whatever, right? And so her brain creates pain because of that belief. So you want to be really careful about, like, why are you telling me there's something physiological when you had 10 days that were pain-free? I don't understand that.
I guess because of the EMG and the ultrasound and the intraoperative findings and things like that.
When were those done? Before your surgery?
EMG and ultrasound were, and then the operation, obviously, at the time of the surgery. Yeah.
Okay. So those things that your doctor told you, how do those feel when you're like, my doctor told me about how my nerve, what did he say? How did he say it was?
I think he said it looked like a mess.
It looked like a mess.
And it was,
Yeah.
and actually when he cut that band of tissue, then it kind of expanded because it was really contracted.
Yeah. So think of that and just like notice in your body, like how that feels to think like that nerve's a mess and it might not get any better. And it's been 6 months now. So I just have to live with what I've got. Like, how does that feel?
Yeah. Not great, I guess.
Would it be in the category of like fear to some degree?
I think I'm getting a little bit better with that, which is why I'm starting to wonder about the neural circuit stuff. But I mean, there's definitely has been some hypervigilance to it, as you say. Like if it starts to bother me, or historically it started to bother me, then I just feel more upset about it. And there's also
an upset, just so you know, that's in the family of frustration, fear. So that amplifies pain.
Yeah, and I also have a lot of I don't know if it's guilt exactly or regret that I went through that first surgery, because there were times before that when I was asymptomatic and I actually canceled it back in 2020. And then the day I canceled it, I started getting more symptoms. So I eventually went through with it. And so now, many days, like every day, I probably beat myself up. Like, why did I do this? Why did I go through with it? I shouldn't have done it. And I'm sure that just amplifies things, and it doesn't, totally not helpful, but
totally not helpful.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. When do you think that? Is it when you have that sensation and then you think I shouldn't have had it, or even just when you're feeling good, you think, oh, I shouldn't have had it?
No, when those 10 days when I didn't really have many symptoms, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
No big deal. So I had the surgery, I had the other surgery, but now it's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So there's I have a podcast episode called Pain Catastrophizing, and you're a medical professional. They actually have a pain catastrophizing scale that they use in research. There's been many studies about how pain catastrophizing amplifies pain. It's more likely for acute pain to turn chronic. It's more likely to get new acute symptoms. It's more likely to have a longer recovery after surgery if you catastrophize pain. So it's a form of being hypervigilant. It kind of sounds mean, I think, to say like catastrophize, because it's not like you're making it up, but little things. Where did that paper go? Even things like this, I really want this to go away. Like that's catastrophizing. Because what we want to do is what I've taught Carrie, that's why now she has that symptom and she says it goes away within 5 minutes, because your brain, as it's extinguishing the pain and rewiring these neural circuits, it's used to producing pain under certain circumstances. Oh, Carrie actually just says, once I stopped catastrophizing is when my pain dramatically lessened. Thank you, Carrie. Yes. So think of the pain signal coming in. I just think of it as like a stimulus response kind of thing. And there's a lot of practiced responses that are like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? This is so bad. My nerve function may never be, it's a mess, right? All of those, any of those, guilt or fear will increase pain. It's actually shown, it's proven. So it's actually called the pain fear cycle. And I have another episode about that. So when you can have a signal, this is why somatic tracking is so important. You have a signal and you react calmly. You react like you were on your trip. I mean, you didn't have the signal, but say you could react with that same nonchalance, like it's been good for 10 days. I'm pretty dang sure it's not like permanently damaged. Otherwise, why was it good for 10 days? Well, I was doing all the activities that I wanted, right? You weren't even just laying around. You were literally like using it. Okay. Like none of that makes sense medically. We just have to stop, going back to that fear model, because then your brain produces the pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I had a thought that using it somehow, like an acupuncture thing where the pressure is overriding the pain stimulus.
Well, what
Yeah.
it is, in my opinion, take it for what it's worth, but this is what the pain reprocessing therapy is about, is think of it as like when you're not in fear, when your nervous system's calm, you're not producing the pain. But so you're doing things you like, you're distracted. That's why sometimes if people are in a lot of pain, they find they can sit and watch a movie just fine, but they sit for 30 minutes at their computer screen and their back hurts, but they sit in other, right? So think of it as enjoyment and distraction and fun versus I was using it. Because you might actually think of times, you told me during those 10 days you weren't on vacation, and there were probably times you weren't like, playing tennis and swimming and all these things. So your brain is going to want to come up with like, all the stuff it does. But also just look at the whole picture. You actually weren't using it sometimes and didn't have pain. You did use it and didn't have pain. It's just you weren't obsessing about it. And right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't really correlated it with any particular emotions, but so is it helpful to keep like a diary like that, or more to just try
That's
to
a good question. So what they recommend is, what our tendency is like, let me look for the pain. And when it happens, it's the opposite. Look for when it feels better. So not only does that, like give you evidence when you do have symptoms again, because they come again sometimes, and that's part of life. Like Carrie was saying, I still get them, but they go away in 5 minutes. It's like if your leg falls asleep, you're not going to freak out because you're like, it's going to be over in a minute, right? That's the kind of attitude you can develop. And then eventually they go down and down. But anyway, when you're detective for the opposite, you could literally get a notebook and be like, I was swimming and it felt good. I was watching a movie and it felt good. And Carrie, is this Carrie? I haven't found an emotion yet either, but I absolutely have predictive coding. I think that's what it's called. Okay, yeah, I can get to that in a minute. But yeah, the graded or the detective for the opposite is just like you're focusing on what feels good. You're writing it down for evidence for later. And again, it's like that gratitude journal. It shifts your brain to looking for what feels better and not what feels worse. And you want to do anything that by emotion, it doesn't have to be necessarily like, it's just when I feel blissful, but not just when I feel excited or whatever. It's not like that. It's more like the nervous system state being in a calm state, a regulated state, or me being stressed out about something triggered, right? So start to notice, not necessarily, I mean, you will already notice when it hurts, you will. In those moments, get as neutral as possible. Somatic tracking, there's that 5-minute somatic tracking. Book a one-on-one call with me. We can do like some more somatic tracking, like in depth. And then you'll have that tool to use. But the more you can stay neutral, be curious about that too. It might go away so fast. And, if it lasts a little while, there's steps to take with that too. But a lot of them could involve go have some fun, distract yourself, ask yourself, how you might be being hard on yourself or whatever it is, right? Like you approach it differently, everything changes.
Okay, that sounds
Does
pretty
that
good.
sound
Give it a try. Thank you.
okay? So detective for the opposite is the first step. Read the way out. You can book a call with me. You can try. I mean, I have all this stuff on my podcast too, but whatever works best for your schedule or whatever. But does that give you some? I feel like I just like drenched you with a fire hose and you're like, but tons of information. But does that at least give you something to chew on for a little while?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. It's a great place to start. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, if you had 10 pain-free days, like there's just no way there's anything physical going on. It doesn't make sense medically. Does it?
It was
What am I
weird.
missing?
And then they came back and I just have no.
But it came back. That's normal, like in this world, right? Like
Okay.
it doesn't mean it's medical because it came back. If anything,
Physiological.
it doesn't prove your point at all,
Yeah, interesting.
right?
Thinking.
Okay. And okay, so and here's this other really good point. And I know we're taking a lot of time with this, but it's so important. It could be emotions. It could be when you're stressed. If you're not making that connection, we didn't talk a lot about predictive coding because you said you haven't really associated it with a certain movement or something. But just like, someone might say, well, it's always when I sit. And there's lots of evidence how sitting is so bad because they've been telling us that for years. And my dad sat a lot and he had a bad back, whatever, right? So there's so much little subconscious stuff in our mind about what's bad to do. And it can be predictive. If we've had pain with a certain movement, probably just 2 or 3 times, our brain is like, that movement is bad. It, creates pain. So years later, or after surgery, things have been fixed. It even feels good sometimes, but then like the predictive coding is not so emotionally based. It's just more like Pavlov's dogs. You know what I mean? It's just like my brain takes a lot of shortcuts because that's how our brains function best. And it's just practice this program. And it's like, this is what happens. So there's ways of reprogramming that, but like, yeah, think of it that way. Your brain has these neural pathways that have gotten really good at running with certain things. You don't even have to think about it. They just happen. Right?
Okay.
You can think
That's
of
a
examples
good
of
place to
how
start.
that's true. Okay. All right. So good. So good. Jill, I think you were next. Did you want coaching? I think I called on you before and you're like, I didn't want coaching.
You're funny.
Hi.
I actually do have a question.
Okay, perfect.
So less about, I guess, coaching. I won't put you through that again because you already did that for me once today, but I do have questions.
Yeah, it was so good. Yeah. Do you have any like how was it for you? Just
Oh, it was good actually. And I did my little dancing thing afterwards too, and tried to kind of make the experience a little more joyful. So yes.
Yeah, we did some little inner child work and yeah, so fun.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So when you're referencing Dr. Schubner's classes, did you do that as a practitioner or did you do that for your own self?
Yeah, I did the practitioner. Yeah, he does I don't know if he still does it, but he did like a 2-day one at first that was like assessing neural circuit disorder or something like that. And then he did like I want to say it was like a 6-week or 8-week course that was for practitioners. But I think it doesn't have to be for medical practitioners. It could be for like coaches, therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, doctors.
I was just curious what your
training. Yeah, he does have one also for clients or patients or whatever you'd say.
Yes. Yeah. And I had seen that stuff first. And then I saw something after you said his name, I kind of researched him. And
nice.
My daughter has just in the last like 6 months or so been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And she's had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Had a lot of trauma in her life.
Yeah.
She's 18.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of mind body healing work for myself, but chronic pain is like a whole nother ball of wax. And it's something which is why I was wondering if you had the practitioner like certification, like if you had gone through his pain
Yeah,
training
I've done
stuff.
that. I've done Alan Gordon's PRT training. Yeah. All the ones they
Okay.
offer, I've done. Yeah.
So are the options that you have for coaching, is it just the like 6-month option, or do you do individual sessions
No,
too?
yeah, yeah. Well, no, not necessarily like individual, just like one, but like a 3-month package. I've done 3-month packages, or I'm starting this somatic journey thing, which I don't know if, she's the right fit for necessarily. She might be actually. She's 18. I was for some reason thinking younger, but like so it'd be like 3 one-on-one sessions per month, and then like a group activity for that 3rd week, but just like 5
Mhm.
people in the group, because I'm going to be
Yeah,
doing
I
a lot
don't
of
know
one-on-one
that.
sessions.
I don't think she would be up for or willing to do that, because she's
Yeah.
seeing like occupational therapists and physical therapists and doing all these other like appointments right now, and
Oh my
getting ready to
gosh.
like transition to college, in the
Oh
fall.
my gosh.
So if I were to throw something big at her, she won't take it. And so I'm trying to find just the right thing that could be helpful
Yeah.
for
Okay.
her.
Yeah. I see what you're
Um,
saying.
because she's let me guide her somatically twice now,
Yeah.
and she was resistant for a while, and it's helped her.
Okay.
But
So
I don't feel qualified to help with the pain
yeah. Well, and honestly,
stuff.
the somatic stuff is great, but if you don't have the belief of like the medical side of things, and you're being told that you have this incurable condition and you've got to stretch and you've got to exercise, like fibromyalgia is so clear cut mind body, it's not even funny. Like there's by diagnosis, there's nothing they can structurally find. So it's,
Right,
you know what I
exactly.
mean?
And
Like
hers,
in the diagnosis
and
itself.
she doesn't have any genetic predisposition to
Yeah.
this either. So
Yeah.
it is all 100%.
Yeah.
Like, she has complex PTSD for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And has
Okay.
had a lot of trauma. And I
Yeah.
think it's just all stored and held in her
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. And yeah. So even, and
I
I've
don't
done
I
somatic
don't feel like
experiencing training too, which is that same kind of somatic stuff to process trauma. Yeah.
but
So yeah,
so the pain work you do though is integrating the somatics, or is it
it's
different? Is
all
it
the
a
same. They
yeah,
overlap so much. Even life
yeah.
coach school trains you to process emotions. Guess what? The exact same way that you do somatic tracking, the exact same way they say to process trauma in somatic experiencing. I mean, I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
exact same, but it's basically 99% the same. It's like, how does the emotion feel? How does the trauma area feel? You know what I mean? It's like,
Okay.
describe it with a shape,
Okay.
with a color. Yeah. So absolutely
Okay.
read the way out, have her read the way out. Fibromyalgia,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much hope for that. You can assess how much she wants to do like those physical treatments, but often that aggravates symptoms because it's uncomfortable. They're doing really hard things, and
Yeah.
it's stressing out the nervous system, and it's telling you you're damaged, versus what we want to see is you're safe. Your body's a safe place. It's okay.
Exactly.
You know
Yeah.
what I
I
mean?
mean,
So
for
like,
sure. I
bless her
mean,
heart.
when they diagnosed her, it was pretty much like yeah, you're probably going to struggle with this for the rest of your life. Like, there was,
The worst thing they
and
could
I'm like, are
say.
you seriously doing
Yeah.
this right now?
You're like,
Like,
and you're going to have like, I've heard it's like Dr. Schubiner says, it's like, I can't remember what he says. It's like, like glass cutting you all over, or I can't remember what he said. He's like, fibromyalgia is like a serious pain, and it's real pain, but it's created from the brain. It's not because of a tissue damage. And a physical approach that is really painful or stressful or whatever, and getting all of that messaging, it's like having a foot in both worlds. And your brain, it is going to be hyper vigilant if it's like, oh, I might, all these
yeah.
things that it's hearing. Right?
Interestingly, the one thing that has helped her the most, because she's gone through like trauma therapists and stuff too, but the one thing that's helped her the most is her occupational therapist,
Oh, good. And a lot of
because
therapists
it's
are
all
getting
about
trained in this.
sensory.
Oh, good.
Well,
Yes.
and she's
Sensory
not doing
and
she's not doing the
regulating.
somatics,
Oh,
because I know
good.
the somatics, but
Okay.
she's doing more of the sensory and the nervous system like regulation and creating safety within
Yeah.
herself, and
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's good. That's what she needs more of. And, like if she wants to book a consult with me, I'm happy to meet with her for an hour, totally for free. And, maybe there's something that we could work out or something if she's just like,
Okay.
oh, I just want like 3 sessions. But usually the reason I do like a 3-month package, I used to just do 6-month packages because I was like, that gives your nervous system a lot of time to adapt. You're not under this pressure of like,
Right.
got to get it done fast. Although it's great and it can happen fast, the more urgent you are about it, the longer it takes. So if I just give
Right.
people 6 months, then I know they're going to have their ups and downs and we're going to go through everything. But then I found a lot of people do well with a 3-month program, and why not do it faster if we can? Like, why not see what our body's it's possible to do? So,
Yeah.
that's the theory behind why I do like a program. Alignment Academy is just month to month. It's group calls, so it might not be exactly what she's looking for either. It's not deep dive into the somatics one-on-one. But there's a lot of good information just about pain reprocessing and, group coaching where, like some of these other people who are on the call now are in it, and, they can tell
Yeah,
you
that
there's
might
like
be
a huge
something to
benefit of
try.
that. And that's just $49 a month right now. It's like ridiculous. It's for how
Yeah,
much
that might
coaching
be
you
something to
get and
try.
group coaching. And Shelby's like, yeah, I know. I mean, since it's my group, I'm going to just do little testimonials and talk about it and whatever, right? Because it really is a good deal. And it's going to be $99 a month, but for the first 49 people, $49 a month. And there's 2 group calls per week. So if she can't make it to one or both, she can write in a question or she can just come to one of them. But yeah.
Are there replays too?
Yes. And there are replays on a private podcast so that you can just listen to it on your own time. There's modules that you can go through and learn this stuff. And it's just a good group. They're just like the best
Okay.
people are joining because, they're the ones attracted to it. They're like, this is, they're positive people. I've heard of some groups that are like triggering. And I don't think we really have that going on. Like we're just, it's a good group. So
can I give a
Carrie's
little plug
messaging.
for it, Betsy?
yes, please. This is
Yeah,
not
I
like
just-
prepared, but
No, not at
I'm
all.
going with it. Please.
Yeah,
I love that.
Sorry, I'm driving again, so I can't turn on my
Okay, yeah.
video.
You're so cute.
But
Thank you.
I know I'm going on a business retreat right now. But
Fun.
yeah, in the woods with some amazing ladies. So exciting.
Aw.
But I just wanted to say that I think that the group is so incredible because sometimes I'm like, I don't really have something going on, but I hear somebody else and how Betsy coaches them and what's going on with them. And I can see, oh, like this is the problem with like what's happening for them. And it's easier for me sometimes to see it in somebody else than to see it in me because I'm so mired down in my own stuff.
Yeah.
I can see it so much more clearly. So I really like the group for that gentle approach as well. So I just had to put that in there. It's a great place to be.
Thank you. I love hearing that. And Carrie said, yes, it's so helpful. It's a steal, so valuable. It saved me the cost of epidurals, which is $1,000. And then, yes, especially for something like chronic pain where it can feel so isolating. I know that's one of the main things I hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
She feels like she's a misfit in the world. She's felt that way for many, many years of her life. And like,
yeah. So that actually, yeah. And we do some
like nobody gets
somatics.
it, especially at her age. Very few, teenagers.
Yeah. And Angie says yes to everything about the group. Thank you. But yeah, especially very few teenagers, but there are, I don't know if there's any really young people right now, but I've definitely done some work with young people. I don't think there's any in Alignment Academy right now, but what was I just going to say too? Oh, actually right now too, I'm offering, if you're in Alignment Academy, I don't know how long I'll do this, right? I have all these ideas and then I'm like, I don't want to get too busy, but if you're in Alignment Academy, you could book a one-on-one session, 1 per month at $100 instead of $250 per session. So she could have a one-on-one option to do some deeper work and then be in the group for basically $150 a month. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing.
Hey, thank you for asking. It gave me a chance. I'm all these workshops. I was like, I gotta keep remember talking about my programs. I gotta keep remember. So like, that was actually perfect that you asked. Thank you. Cause it is like, it's a win-win. Like, I love it. I love the more people that know about this information. I think the, the group has such a good dynamic, and it just happens that 3 people here are in the group. So, but it's good, you guys. I love it. Okay, thanks. Yeah. And so, yeah, thanks for that question. All right. Okay. Angie, did you have a question for coaching?
Yeah, speaking of like the good part of a group dynamic, I came here just thinking I would listen, but
Yeah.
every single person I've written down a note of like, oh yeah, like I want to ask about that.
Yeah.
So I
Good.
think the main thing that I will ask about and focus on, you used when you were talking to James, the little analogy of like when your leg falls asleep, you don't freak out because you
Yes.
know it's going to go away.
Yeah.
And I've heard you say that before, but the thing is, I do freak out.
When your leg goes to sleep.
Yeah, because that is a sensation, like
Yeah.
with the numbness and tingling that I
Yeah.
get with
Yeah.
MS. Like,
Yeah. Okay. Makes
I,
sense. There's a
and that made
story.
me, yeah, it made me realize, like, I think that my nervous system is just like hyper vigilant all the time
Yeah.
because I never know, like, I go to bed wondering like what is gonna be going on with my body when I wake up,
Mhm.
or like I
Totally.
wake up afraid to move my body because can I? What
Yeah.
happened while I was sleeping? Like, and so what do you do about that? Like when you're just kind of constantly in that
Yeah.
state?
Okay.
Like
Good,
I don't
good,
feel
good
safe in my
question.
body
Yeah.
ever.
Great question. Okay. So, be that observer as much as you can, right? So you have a sensation, say it is your foot's asleep. What does your brain go to? We talked about the catastrophizing.
Mhm.
So really getting familiar. Maybe I should just take 1 second and pick up that paper and read you, because it surprised me. Catastrophizing sounded to me like you're like, oh my gosh, my whole leg's gonna fall off or whatever. No,
Mhm.
things like, I feel I can't stand it anymore. I become afraid that the pain may get worse. I think of other painful experiences. I anxiously want the pain to go away. That's catastrophizing. Even
Mhm.
those simple
Mhm.
phrases that, like, I would never judge anyone for saying. I wouldn't be like, you're such a drama queen. You're like, I can't seem to keep it out of my mind. I keep thinking about how much it hurts.
Yeah.
I keep
It,
thinking about how badly I want the pain to
how
stop.
long will it last? Like
How
that's
long will it last? There's nothing I can
I
do to
don't know.
reduce.
Go away.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll go away. I feel it. Yeah, I worry all the time about whether the pain will end. I feel I can't go on. It's terrible. I feel it's never going to get any better. It's awful. I feel it overwhelms me. I wonder whether something serious may happen. That's
Yes.
it. That's the whole pain catastrophizing scale. There's
Mhm.
nothing about like, oh, I'm never going to work again. Like, it's not like that. It's literally just like, I feel like I can't stand it anymore. That alone is like adding fuel to the fire. So you just want to start with observing. So just observe where your brain goes, get really familiar with the catastrophizing. And yeah, I think Carrie was saying to this, the omnipresent hypervigilant nervous system, right? So hypervigilant and so destructive. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. So observe.
Okay.
And then, just like I said with James, and I've told you this, I'm sure, be the detective for the opposite. And you've found some good moments, right? I don't know if I've checked in with you. How's detective for the opposite going? I know you jumped up on a stage once when you didn't think you
yes,
could. You
that
told me
was
about
good.
that.
Yeah, there are good moments here and there, but like even when you ask me that question, it's like my brain can't
Yes.
think of those. It's like,
Yes.
no, it's always like I'm always thinking about my body and what it can or can't do, basically.
What it can't do, right? Fascinating. So maybe go out and buy a cute notebook and like act like you're a detective. Have you seen in those movies where the detective goes around like making notes and they're like making a case? Because when your brain gets into catastrophizing, it literally changes your memories. It does. It's crazy. but you can't think of any good times, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy how it does that. I
Yeah.
saw my daughter do it. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
one of the other things, one of the other things I wrote down about was with the graded exposure, because
Mhm.
walking is a struggle for me.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when I try to think about walking smoothly,
Yeah.
without pain, with my foot picking up all the wood,
Yeah.
all of the things, I can't do it. I can't
Mhm.
remember what
Yeah.
that feels like. And it gets
Yes.
frustrating, and so I stop even trying, it works me up
Mhm.
more to try to do
Yes.
that. So yeah.
Good
Anyway.
observing. Good observing. Because it's not the technique that we try, it's the emotion we're having about it. So
Mhm.
we could be freaked out being detective. I don't know if you could with detective for the opposite, but sometimes I see it where people are like, they're like, I journaled and I do the meditating and I do all this, and they're also freaked out at the same time. And they're
Mhm.
doing it from this perfectionistic energy versus, when I'm feeling those good things, looking for those good things.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Have you had any of those moments now that you think? I've actually even done a session with someone who was like, no, no, no. And then at the very end of the session, we got to a calmer state. And all of a sudden she was like, you know what happened last week? I just remembered. So just noticing
Mhm.
if you're in that mode of everything's bad and it always has been and it always will be, chances are you're in a survival state right now thinking that.
Mhm.
So just
Yeah.
notice, maybe you do watch a movie or something, or you pet your dog, or you have a fun moment with your daughter where she's being really sweet and you get calm for a minute.
Mhm.
Those thoughts may even change. You might even remember something, or you could write down that moment. I was playing with my daughter and she wasn't hitting me and it was really good and felt like a good mom. And and I actually felt kind of good in my body for a minute. We danced and I actually was able to move my body and it felt fun. Didn't you tell me something about dancing? Did you dance
That
once?
she always wants me to dance, and I'm
Oh,
always
okay.
like, no, I can't. Or
Yeah.
yeah.
So maybe imagine dancing, imagine what feels the downstream. I don't know if you were here for that part of the conversation, but you've heard me say it, I'm sure,
Yeah.
before. The downstream, if I say something and you're like, oh, it always stresses me out to do that, don't imagine walking. Imagine whatever, playing, dancing, or,
Mhm.
playing on the beach, or whatever it is. Maybe don't even imagine those things. Just go watch a movie. Literally, there's so many options, but the more you're getting to that calm state rather than the hypervigilant state,
Mhm.
that will decrease your symptoms.
Okay.
Especially since we know your symptoms changed when you just did that VOO. That's something
Right.
for your detective for the opposite, right? I had
Mhm.
numbness and tingling in my hands. I did a small, trauma release exercise and that went away.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting because I didn't think we'd touch on all of the notes that I wrote down, but we almost have. And something that
Nice.
you just said
Yeah.
kind of brings me to the last one about
Perfect.
what Carrie was saying about cultivating a feeling that she wants to feel,
Yes. I love that.
And so for me, a feeling I want to feel is freedom,
Yes.
freedom in my body, because I feel very trapped.
Yes.
And but when I think about freedom, I don't know what it feels like
Yeah.
in my
Okay.
body. But
Yeah.
then the image that comes to my mind is like a bird, like a hawk soaring through the,
Yes.
so can I just imagine I'm that hawk and
Yeah.
what
Yes.
that feels like, or does it need to
Totally.
be like a lived
No.
experience
No,
that
it could be
okay.
something you saw in a movie and you're like, I bet this really rich person feels abundant, and you're just like,
Mhm.
oh, how would it feel? I literally watch movies just to be as I choose TV shows that I'm like, I want to see really rich people and how they're just
Mhm.
oh, just living and traveling. And those are the kind of shows I want to watch. That's how I want to, be creating those emotions on purpose. And I'll tell you, it seems like when you have a physical pain, that's the worst one to have to deal with. But anyone who, other people on here are coaches. Well, one, I keep thinking
I
Carrie's.
am too.
Okay, you are. Okay. So what do you coach on? Is there a certain,
Well, I haven't been coaching a lot lately. I mean,
okay,
that's a whole other thing. But the
okay,
reason
yeah.
I became a coach was because I wanted to help people with chronic illness.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Yeah.
was going to say, so say it's like a weight loss coach or something.
Mhm.
The person will tell you like, okay, well, what I really want to feel is like comfortable in my own skin. And there's no way I can feel comfortable in my own skin until I lose 50 pounds.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, but what we want to do is get you feeling, you know, how you think you would feel if you lost that 50 pounds and how you have access to whatever that is now, even in your current body. And it's the hardest thing. It's like if someone wants a relationship, you're like, you have to be satisfied with not having a relationship
Mhm.
and have the feeling of how it would feel. You know what I mean? It's like the most annoying thing to hear, but it really works just the same with money, with relationships, with your body. And it starts out small because there's a lot of momentum in the direction of like hypervigilance and everything's bad and looking for scary things and creating more pain. But the more you're like, okay, maybe I do feel some freedom when my husband takes my daughter and I get to lay on the couch and watch
Yeah.
whatever show I want and I
Mhm.
have the remote. That's freedom, right? Like
Right.
you're going to think of what is happening in your life right now, in the body you're in the feelings that you have. And that's the challenge, but it gets easier because then you start to see it more and more. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. And that will be like a tweak for my brain because it's very much like I want freedom of movement. I want to
Yes.
be able
And the
to
person,
walk
yeah,
and run and
yeah.
but
It's
I
like the
can't
person,
like the example that you gave is perfect. Like, yeah, when my husband takes our daughter and
yeah,
I can like just lay on the couch and watch something or read something and
heck yeah.
that is a feeling of freedom and like
Yeah.
just yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
look for that, cultivate that. You will be surprised, just like the gratitude journal. Someone who's like, I feel there's nothing to be grateful for. You're like, you have a house, you have running water, you have electricity. You could, you know, you could get just looking around your room, you could probably name 100 things. So it will get easier the more you practice it. But that little like belief of like, well, but I really want this. It's like the person who's like, well, I can't really feel whole until I have this other person. And you're like, no, we're going to teach you that you can feel that now. And then that other person just comes, right? You feel abundant. And then all of a sudden you're taking actions that lead to more abundance. But when you're like, well, I can't feel abundant until I have $1 million, that's going to be a long, hard journey.
Okay.
Yeah. So good. I love when it's like, okay, it's just, you can relate it to other things you see in life. And then you're like, okay, although chronic pain does feel so different and, you know, a chronic diagnosis like that does feel like, okay, but this is really a worst case, you know, like it's just a different kind of challenge.
Yeah. Like when you're giving examples, I'm like, yeah, but not having a partner or not having a lot of money is so different from like not being able to move in your body. But
Right?
but
Yeah.
is it?
Is it right? You talk to someone who's, you know, in her 40s and has never been married and wants to have a kid, and that's all she's thinking about. And her, you know, I coached someone like that, and it was like she had some chronic pain stuff, but really she was, you know, so that was consuming her thoughts all of the time. So it's, yeah. And Carrie says, thank you, Angie, for taking it to the next level with my question. That's so practical and totally helps me get to the cultivating phase. You guys, I love that the conversation has shifted in that direction too. So it's just an example of like, you know, there's a lot of layers, right, that we can unpack. And even, you know, some people are like, I've told them like, yeah, I've coached with this person and they're still in my group, and they're like, oh my gosh, they're still in your group, but does that mean they just have chronic pain forever? But it's like, these principles are just life principles that they apply to the body, they apply to relationships, they apply to your boss, growing your business. So it helps in all the areas of life to get your nervous system regulated and see it through that lens. And it helps with pain too. It's pretty freaking amazing. Yay. Thank you for the
Awesome.
heart
Thank
and the,
you.
yeah. Okay. Did we get to everything? Did anything else come up? We're actually ahead of time from what I thought. I was giving myself a couple hours. So if there's any last little like insights, questions that came up, just wanting to
Can
talk.
I ask
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
Shelby, I didn't coach you. I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm
that's all
like,
good.
oh, we're all done. Shelby, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so
Thanks for speaking up.
I saw a reel that you did a couple days ago, and I ended up following the guy that you like, had done a remix of a reel with him. Can't
Yeah,
remember what it was,
it was probably
which one it was.
It was probably the Stop Chasing Pain one, and not that there was like
Yes,
a
that was the
woo
one.
guy that you probably were like in line with, and then there's a Stop Chasing Pain. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the guy. So I went and watched some of his stuff, and he was talking about like I really like pretty much every part of my body, like I'm good with, except for like, the jaw stuff that we were coaching on earlier this week.
Yeah.
And he was saying that the relaxed position for your tongue is up at the roof of your mouth, not at the bottom. And I was like,
weird.
What? But then I'm like, is this just like, it doesn't matter if your nervous system is regulated, it doesn't matter where your tongue is? I don't know.
Right? Because in yoga, they always say like, is the tongue at the roof of the mouth? Oh, relax it down, drop it down.
That's what I've always heard.
So I'll give you my take on him if you want. Like, I don't know for sure the answer to that. Yeah. Okay.
Let me tell you one thing real quick.
Yes.
It's just that, so I've been practicing that over the past couple days, day perfect. Or so. Yeah. It's just like having my tongue more at the roof of my mouth with like a little bit, like the whole thing up, like in the back with on the soft palate as well, with less tension, because I noticed that I hold tension in my jaw. I notice, especially when I'm driving, that I clench, like there's a lot of fear about like worrying about what other people are doing and,
Yeah.
So, so I'm like actively telling myself, oh, put your tongue at the bottom, like relax. It's like a forced relax.
Yeah.
And
forced relax. I love it.
I know. So good.
Right.
But I also and like I know that this jaw pain is 100% neuroplastic, because I wake up sometimes it's not hurting. Like during the day sometimes it's not hurting. Like it just come and go. So I'm like, I know 100%.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing, I feel like it does feel more relaxed, like up at the top of the roof of my mouth. And I'm like, is that just because I listened to him and he told me that's the right way? And like, now I'm relaxed because I feel like I'm doing it the right way. Like, is it more nervous system? Anyway, so that's kind of my question.
I love that question. Right. And I don't for sure know the answer, but I have my theory. Like, I do think you're right. Like as a physical therapist, I told people, like, if you do this exercise for your rotator cuff won't hurt anymore. And they did the exercise and, they're like, oh, it feels good. I've done that exercise. I'm like, oh, just feels like it's just like healing my shoulder dynamics. Cause I, would explain the shoulder dynamic. So I think there is something to like, we can do something physically that changes our nervous system. They actually say that changing your posture does change your nervous system. So, is it that it has to be in correct vertebral alignment to not have pain? Or is it because when we sit up straighter, we like take deeper breaths and we actually like stimulate the vagus nerve to calm the nervous system? You know what I mean? Like, it's all connected, in my opinion.
Because he was talking about that. He was saying the reason why it's so much better is it corrects your posture. It helps with your breathing. So my brain's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So like, I should do that way. That's more alignment. But I'm like, I guess I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't matter.
That's what I think. That's why I'm like, I'll take a good placebo if it's not very expensive. Cause then I'm like, that calms my nervous system. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I want to like, achieve like curly hair like yours, and you tell me that this product does it, and, I start to believe it. I'm like, that's so much easier than having my brain try to do all the work. Yeah, you could do that, but why not help your nervous system too with something that resonates with you? That's what I think.
Yeah. And I think like the combination, of course, between like the inner child work stuff with
Yeah.
powerless and
Yeah.
feeling like, oh, I'm hitting this from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm feeling so much less
Yeah.
tension in my jaw, and
Yeah.
I'm feeling so much less pain, which
Yes.
is really good because I was feeling very
That-
severe pain earlier this week.
That is so good. Right. She was a
Yeah.
demo for the inner child work, and we did some realization stuff with like her jaw. And then, yeah, I mean, I think as long as it feels downstream, right? Like you don't want to take a lot of medical information that scares you. And then you're like, ooh, because I've had people that get hyper vigilant about their posture, right? So if you're doing it with that, like observer, like compassion, like, oh, it feels good to have my tongue up there. I mean, how many of us were doing that along with, I'm like, what does that feel like? Right. Like we were probably all doing that. And I was like, that does kind of feel good. Right. So there's top down, there's bottom up approaches. We can do both. And if there is something that is not sending the message to our brain that we're damaged, right? Like that's what we want to just avoid. Anything that's like, are you laughing? Oh, I don't know if it's laughing or it's just the connection.
My tongue go. Who knows?
Oh, what was that?
It might be the connection.
I
Sorry.
think the
Can you
connection
hear
got a little
me?
garbled. It sounded like
Can you
I
hear
was
me?
hilarious.
It might have been the connection.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Did you have a
Sorry.
comment about the tongue?
You're
or
so
was-
hilarious. I'll
I
take
know.
it.
I'm like, she is just laughing so hard at my jokes. Don't even make a joke.
Okay.
And
I guess my last question is just what is your take on him then? Because you
oh
were gonna
yeah.
say that at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And then I
so
think I'm good.
I try to like, I feel like I just come at this with how it resonates with me. So this is purely based on like, I just that part I don't really jive with, but this part I like. And that's kind of how he is for me. He's very physically oriented. He's a chiropractor, and he has found ways of places on the body that you push, and his whole thing is about moving lymph through the body. So
yeah.
he
right.
sounds very physical to me, and it sounds a little much to me, right? Like it sounds like there's this whole course on the tongue and all this stuff and all these pressure points and these things. Again, it's sending more the message of like something physically is wrong, because
Yeah.
I think when you're in that parasympathetic calm state, your body knows how to circulate the lymph around, right? Like it's where circulation happens best. It's where respiration, cardiovascular. I'm not sure about the lymphatics. Actually, James, you might know more about lymphatics. You probably know a lot. Kidney, is that related at all because of the filtering? No? Okay. Yeah, see, it shows how much I know about that. I'm more a musculoskeletal kind of girl, but like, that's what I would think is right. Like, instead of like all of these complex jump through the hoop things in order to have the perfect lymph flow, just being like, okay, when I get into more of that parasympathetic calm state more of the time, I trust that my digestion's just going to work well, and I don't have to take these like certain supplements and restrict foods, right? It's just like, but he posts a lot of really cool mind body stuff. So I've kept following him. And actually, you're not the first person who's asked me like why I follow him, because I just, for myself, I'll hear some of his messages and I'm like, nope, that doesn't like jive with me. But then others, I'm like, oh, I love what he did share. It was basically how emotions cause inflammation, and it's research from an article. So he posts a lot about how the brain and body are connected, and he posts a lot about emotions creating, physical effects. So that's, and his, I love his name is his whatever brand name is Stop Chasing Pain, which I think is cool too. Cause it's like, that's what I was doing as a physical therapist. They'd have their right shoulder, and then they'd be a left shoulder, and then they'd be a back, and then they'd be right. And we're just chasing the pain, and one thing gets solved and another two things come up. Right. So that's what I heard him on some podcast, and then I just kept following him. But yeah, I feel what feels right to you. And everyone has a different level of what they like. Like some people like more a morning routine. And I'm just in this phase of life right now where I'm like, let's see how unroutine I can be and still, have success in my life or whatever. Right. So do what feels right to you.
Don't tell me stuff like that. Then I'm going to try it. Just kidding.
You might want to I've swung the
might want
pendulum
to.
too far. And then I'm like, okay, I do have to work some, like that does fulfill me to, have money flowing into work. And, there's some, but I want to make it fun. So, and I might even go back to more of a schedule, right? Because I know you do lots of like cool. Oh, that is so crazy. Weird. My phone just started playing Abraham right at that moment. I don't even know. I didn't touch my
Oh.
phone. Like, that sounds like Esther. Anyway, weird. But yeah. And then let's see, Angie had said earlier, I always heard the roof of your mouth too. That's where my mind tends to naturally go, but I clench and grind and have a lot of tension in my jaw. So who knows? And Carrie, I feel like I can't relax my jaw if I force my tongue down. Okay, if you have a placebo for changing hair texture, I'm buying stock in this. Okay, my sister has changed her hair from straight to curly. And so I'm like, it is possible. And I know several women who have their hair has gotten curlier with age. But yeah, I think Shelby needs to give a class on curly hair.
Well, I just got my hair done today and the lady kind of destroyed it. So, like a lot of the curl pattern.
Yeah,
so
but you have your techniques. There's a lot to like the technique and the product. And is that placebo? Maybe. Like when we take a sugar pill, 1/3 to 2/3 of people actually produce the chemical that the sugar pill is supposed to, right? So I think it's possible with hair. And I just like to, I talked about this on the decision making with intuition, where I'll actually hold a shampoo and do a muscle test and sway back or forth, just being like, is this good for my body or not? Or, will this one be good for my hair? And if nothing else, I just have that belief that I did a sway test on it and got a positive answer. So if nothing else, I think that helps. But I really try to be as much as possible, doing it out of, what feels downstream. If it's super expensive or super, I just have to feel in line with it. And then I think it works. But yeah, I just call it a placebo too, just to reinforce to my brain that it's okay, maybe it's a placebo, maybe not, but I like to call it that just to keep reinforcing how much my brain's in control of things. Neurologic system reigns queen, Carrie says. And then, yeah, Jill had to go. Okay. That was so good. Yeah, I think because I talked to you earlier, I was like, oh, I've already coached you. But yeah, that was so good. I'm glad you asked that. And that didn't even take very long. And do you have any other things that have come up? Questions, comments? I love the direction we've just been meandering around. There's been some real pain science stuff and then talking about hair products. All right. That might be it then, unless you guys, if anyone else comes up with any last closing remarks. Okay. Well, this has been really fun. Thanks, guys. And be sure and just contact me if you have any other questions, and I'll be seeing you guys other than James, unless you join, you're welcome to, and be seeing you guys in Alignment Academy. And yeah, and watch for the replays. Hopefully you're on my email list. Are you on my email list, James? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So you'll get, links to the replays if you haven't gone to watch them. And yeah, thanks for coming. That was really fun. That's a good way to spend a Friday night. I never thought I'd want to coach on a Friday night, but you guys made it awesome. All right. Thanks. Have a good night. Good weekend. Bye.